Hey, this is Jamie with Non-Stonemaier Games, and today I'm going to talk about the top 21 through 30 games on BoardGameGeek. I won't go into here how BoardGameGeek rates their games. It comes down to a formula that is largely unknown. The rankings are very shrouded in mystery, I would say, but they're largely based on user ratings. People go to BoardGameGeek, they rate how they feel about games, and then eventually some of those games end up in BoardGameGeek's top 100 list. And I've talked about the top 10, I've talked about the top 10 through 11 through 20, and today I'm here to talk about my thoughts and my favorite mechanisms of the games that are currently in slots 21 through 30 as of April 18th. 2022. Actually, April 19th. I'm filming this on the 19th. I should note that there are a few games that are right on the cusp of making it in, and that might push some other games out. Those games are the second edition of Eclipse, Ruins of Arnak, and Ark Nova. I suspect all three of these games, or at least some of them, will soon bump into this range, and some will bump down. I'm also going to start out by mentioning how I asked Non-Stonemaier Games ambassadors which of the games on the current list that they like the most. So just to give a rough ranking of the ambassador picks, how people who closely follow and support Non-Stonemaier Games rank the games in the top 21. Everdell came in first, then Root, then Clank Legacy, Orleans, A Feast for Odin, Terra Mystica, Arkham Horror, and then Mage Knight. And I specifically asked them to not rank the two Non-Stonemaier games that are in this range. I will talk about them more in a second. Those are Wingspan and Viticulture Essential. They are not, but I didn't make them eligible for ambassadors to pick because, I don't know, they're biased. They're Non-Stonemaier Games ambassadors. They were probably going to pick Wingspan or Viticulture, or at least a number of them would. All right, the top 21 games. And I'm just going to start with number 21, Terra Mystica. This is a game that I don't own because a friend of mine, who I have played Terra Mystica with the most, owns a fully decked out copy of Terra Mystica. And most of my recent plays, in the last few years at least, have come on Board Game Arena, the digital platform, playing against other human players. And I love this game so much that I even designed a fan faction for it called the Atlanteans. And that is available right now for playtesting on Board Game Arena. I say designed very loosely. I submitted a concept that I thought would work pretty well because I know the game pretty well, really well. And it was neat to see that they accepted it as one of their factions. Terra Mystica, I love so many things about this game. You've probably seen me, if you follow this channel, you've seen me mention it on many different videos over the years. But at its heart, Terra Mystica is a fairly heavy Euro game where you are pulling buildings off of your player mat. It's one of the first games to do this thing where you pull buildings off your player mat, put them on the map, and those buildings that you pulled off reveal income benefits that appear on your player mat. I think Hansa Teutonica was maybe the first game to do this, but Terra Mystica was one of the first to have this mechanism that I really love, that I've used in Tapestry and Scythe. It's one of my favorite mechanisms in games, just period. I love that idea where you're pulling things off your mat and revealing either instant or ongoing benefits. That, I would say, is probably my favorite mechanism of Terra Mystica. The other thing that I really like, and I've gone back and forth about this over the years about Terra Mystica, is the idea that you are not there's no conquering at all. You are establishing positions on the map, and those positions can lead to both positive and negative player interaction, but nothing too harsh, nothing take-thatty. And I really like how it has this strong sense of a map, a place, and player interaction on a map without asking players to conquer or destroy things that other players have created. I think that's brilliant. I think that's a wonderful way to have this strong sense of player interaction in a game, in a map-driven game, without having some of the bad things that can arise from conflict and combat, and having a game almost end up focusing too much on combat, as I've seen in many games, unless it's directly focused on a combat game. And the positive player interaction part of this is that if you are close to another player, adjacent to another player, it can actually give you, whenever they upgrade their building, if you have buildings next to it, you can get power, you can get some magic. There's this really cool Mancala mechanism in Terra Mystica that I really enjoy that has to do with magic and power. But at the same time, it also makes your trading houses less expensive to make. And so it actually gives you a reason to not just go off to different sides of the map, but actually stay fairly close together, even though in staying close together, you are limiting each other's expansion into certain areas. I think that's just a really clever thing. I can go on and on about Terra Mystica. Maybe someday I'll do a deep dive video about it and the different factions and what I think about them. Oh, I love the asymmetry too. I didn't even mention the asymmetry. There's so much asymmetry in this game from one faction to the next. But yeah, number 21, Terra Mystica. Love this game. I love a lot of the games on this list, by the way. Next is A Feast for Odin, another very heavy Euro game, maybe even arguably heavier than Terra Mystica, because A Feast for Odin uses worker placement in a way that I don't think I've seen before in a game, in that there are over 60 worker placement action spaces available to you, and every one is different. Some of them are kind of similar, but every one is different, and they're scaled in columns based on the number of workers you place there. So there's a column for placing 1 worker, then 2, 3, and then 4. And I think this is a really clever element of it, because it means that early on, well, really at any time during the game, you can choose any of those actions if you have enough workers and if another player hasn't selected them. But you can almost give yourself a self-selection process if you want, if you are overwhelmed with a number of actions here. And an example of this is you can say, okay, early on in this round, I'm just going to choose a 4-worker action, this big, strong, really powerful action, and I'm not going to have many workers left after that, but that's okay because now I'm not overwhelmed with as many actions, because now I can't even look at the 3 and 4 worker columns because I don't have enough workers left to use them. So you can kind of create your own self-selection process in A Feast for Odin. The other thing that I really, really like about A Feast for Odin, there are many things, but I love the polyomino puzzle in the game. The game gives you a little board that you start out with, and a little island, and you can also add other islands. You can go explore other islands as well. It's very thematic for a Euro, I would say. And you can add these little pieces. Throughout the game, you're adding these little pieces to this board to increase your income and also to avoid having negative points, because there are a bunch of negative points if you don't fill up that mat at the end of the game. I love this polyomino puzzle. It feels good to constantly get stuff. And actually, that reminds me of one other thing I should mention about Feast for Odin. Another game that I probably could do a deep dive video about is the feeding system. I think it is the most forgiving feed your workers system in a Euro farming style game like this, because it is very easy to get the food that you need. Sometimes you need to push a little bit to get it, but it's very easy to get the food that you need. The decision point is more which food tokens, which polyomino tokens am I going to upgrade into things that I can use to fill up my mat to get points versus those that I leave just to feed the feast, to have the feast every round. I think that's a great decision point. That's number 22 on BoardGameGeek right now, A Feast for Odin. At number 23 is a game that I'm not going to talk too much about because it is Wingspan. It's one of our games. It's a game that I really, really love. I'll mention one of my favorite mechanisms very briefly. But one of the reasons that I'm not going to mention it is that Wingspan actually was in the top 11 through 20. And I wouldn't even say, technically, yes, it has dropped. But games fluctuate in the BGG, even top 50 all the time, where games move up, games move down a little bit. I don't think it's an indicator that a game has gotten necessarily less popular or anything, but I just wanted to mention that if you want to see me talk more about Wingspan, there are many videos about it, and you can go see my top 11 through 20 video, which is linked below. But it's at 23 right now, number 23, and my favorite mechanism in Wingspan, other than what Elizabeth did with the birds, which I think is incredible, of designing so many different mechanisms for individual birds that match the theme and how those birds really interact and really live in real life. I love that about the game. That's why I'm drawn back to the game over and over again. But one of the things I really love is the action selection system and this player mat that you have, where you are placing cards on the player mat, and many of those cards improve your engine because on your turn, you are activating one row on your player mat, or you are playing a bird. You're either playing a bird or you're activating an entire row on your player mat. And so any bird that has a when activated ability on your player mat, whenever you use that row that has that bird in it, you are gaining that ability along the way. So your engine is getting better that way. And at the same time, every time you place a bird from right to left in a row, or in a habitat, as they're called in Wingspan, you are improving the core benefit of that habitat. So even if you play a bird that maybe doesn't give you an ongoing ability, or doesn't give you an ability that you want to activate all that often, you are still improving the core benefit every time you play a bird. And birds are giving you points at the end of the game. So every time you play a bird, you're getting multiple benefits. You're improving the engine in multiple ways, and probably getting some points and other things at the end of the game as well. I love that system. Really, really love that system in Wingspan. That's number 23 on the list. And number 24 is Arkham Horror LCG. This is a game that has not clicked with me personally. I really admire what they've done with this game, and the bag building element I think is interesting. I think that the thing that I admire most about it is how every expansion I played this game I think 3 times now. How every expansion of the game uses cards in such a unique, different way that adds to the mystery, that adds to the theme, adds to the story of each individual little mini campaign or mini session or scenario in Arkham Horror LCG. It hasn't personally clicked with me because it doesn't have the level of agency that I really like in a game. There's so many times that I've pulled stuff out of the bag that just hasn't worked for me, and I think and has kind of spoiled my experience playing the game. However, I should say that I'm guessing that people who have gone deep into Arkham Horror LCG have really learned how to use that bag in a way that that doesn't feel bad every time they draw something out of it, and maybe it does still it result in some negative things that happen, but if you really embrace the theme of the game, that kind of does match it. There should be a sense of dread and terror as you pull stuff out of that bag that very much matches the theme of the game. It isn't just something that it just isn't something that I gravitate towards when I play a game. So I respect a lot about the Arkham Horror LCG. I love that it's at 24 on the BoardGameGeek rankings. I can tell a lot of people love this game. Just didn't quite click for me. At number 25 is Root. Root is one of the most asymmetric games that I've ever played. And I love that each player gets their own player mat that very succinctly walks them through each turn for each faction, because each turn for each faction is very, very different in Root. I think I love how easy Root makes it for you to dive into a new faction and get to know that faction turn by turn. The other thing I really love about Root, actually 2 things, is the shared resources in the game. For example, there's a deck of cards that is shared by all players, and that deck is used in vastly different ways depending on your faction. I think that's really clever. Rather than giving each faction a whole big deck of cards or having multiple decks of cards for different uses, they were able to use this one deck for so many different uses. I think that's brilliant. The other element similar to that is the victory point track. Most of the factions have a win condition that's contingent upon reaching, I believe, 30 victory points on that track, but they gain those victory points in such different ways. I think this is a really clever twist. I've said this several times about Root compared to Vast, in that Root focuses a lot on that victory point track, but gives each faction very different ways of getting victory points. But having that central concept, I think, makes each faction easier to grok, easier to understand. Those are my favorite things about Root at number 25 on the BoardGameGeek top 21 through 30. And number 26 is the other game of mine. That's Viticulture Essential Edition, which actually no longer even has this red stamp on it. Don't worry if you have a version that doesn't have that red stamp. Viticulture Essential is it's a game about running a vineyard, and I'm really excited about it, particularly right now, because I'm filming this video as I am releasing information about the Viticulture World Cooperative expansion. I have done many videos about viticulture, why I love this game, games that I recommend that are similar to it. If I had to pick one mechanism off the top of my head about what I really love about this game, I really love how the worker placement ended up. It scales well. There are a different number of action spaces for different players. I like that. I like that there are bonuses on many of the action spaces, where if you're oftentimes the first player to go there, you probably choose the bonus. You'll get a bonus if you are on that specific action space that gives you the bonus. But you still have other action spaces available to gain the core action benefit. I love the Grande worker system. So you have regular workers that can only be placed on the action spaces. Grande workers can be placed on action spaces, but they can also just be placed on the action itself. So if an action is full, you have this one backup worker that you can always use to get in there and take the action that you need. And I also like the seasonality of it. I like that you get a set number of workers to use each year, and you have to choose, do I use them in the summer or do I use them in the winter? Do I save them for the winter for different types of actions? And the summer actions feel very different than the winter actions. I think that's a really fun decision point as well. So yeah, I really like how the worker placement system worked out in Viticulture. It was definitely inspired by a number of other games, including Fresco, which inspired the Wake Up track. Stone Age inspired it to a certain extent, even though the flow of the game is very different than Stone Age. And Agricola. Agricola influenced it as well. So that is Viticulture at number 26. And number 27 is a game that I love called Everdell. Everdell is a beautiful game. It has, in fact, Everdell I love because the artist, Andrew Bosley, is the artist of Tapestry and also the artist of Viticulture World. I love working with Andrew, and I was introduced to Andrew's art through Everdell. I saw the art on this box, and I was like, I need to work with that artist someday. I hope he will work with me. And Andrew has been wonderful to work with over the years. Everdell, the one thing I really, really love, well, not the one thing, one of the things that I really, really love about Everdell is it's a game in which you are kind of building your own little village of cards. And it has some cool worker placement stuff going on that I enjoy. It has a similar sense to Tapestry in that you are playing a round-based game, but at your own pace. And so there's never a point where you are just sitting there waiting for other players to finish a round. That doesn't happen in Everdell. I really like that. But I think the thing that I have returned to Everdell, and my affection for it has grown over the years, other than the beauty of the art, is the sense of trying to get one more turn out of each round, and how certain things that you play help you play other things more easily. Like you might play one card, and that card means that you can play another card for free, and that card might give you a little resource that you can use to take one more action, to do one more thing. I really like that idea of stretching out the rounds and getting the most out of every round in the game based on this optimization puzzle in Everdell. That's Everdell number 27. At number 28, we have another game that I own and love. I love this game so much, Clank Legacy. So this isn't like Clank in general. It's Clank Legacy specifically. That's at number 28. It's one of the few legacy games that have cracked the BoardGameGeek top 100. And it's interesting to me that the legacy game has gotten that high on the list because it is more expensive. It's bigger than the core game of Clank, which I also love. But it is really a wonderful legacy experience. It's one of my favorite legacy experiences. I can't show you the board because I don't want to spoil anything, but one of the first things that you'll see when you open up Clank Legacy is this board that has some actions at the top of the board, but there's so much down below that's just blank, like there's nothing there at all. And that's so exciting that that as players, you get to construct this map over time. You get to be the ones that decide where different actions go or which actions go in certain predestined positions based on the designers. I think that is a wonderful thing about Clank Legacy. I also think the humor in the game is really, really well done. There are some really funny things that are designed in the game and also can emerge from the narrative of the game and the decisions players make. I don't want to spoil it, but there's a really good sense of writing and humor in Clank Legacy while still making it a really fun version of Clank. I highly recommend it if you're looking for a legacy game and if you enjoy deck building. That's Clank Legacy at number 28. Orleans is number 29 on this list, and Orleans is a game that I have been enamored with for a long, long time. And again, I'm talking about Viticulture, here, I'll hold up the thing, Viticulture World, the cooperative expansion. Orleans Invasion, the cooperative expansion for Orleans, was a big inspiration for Viticulture World. I wanted a Euro game similar to Orleans. I wanted a cooperative game where you weren't constantly punished by an antagonistic AI. There are many cooperative games that do this, but I haven't seen, they've used limited information as the key mechanism to prevent that from happening. I haven't seen many games like that, many Euro-style cooperative games like that, where you're getting a bunch of great stuff throughout the game. You are rewarded throughout the game, as you are in Orleans Invasion, but it is still a tough cooperative puzzle to achieve. I don't know if I've ever even won Orleans Invasion, but I've had fun every time I've played it. The core mechanism of Orleans is the bag building, and I love the bag building. I love the double bonuses specifically in Orleans, in that whenever you place a few workers, you draw workers out of your bag, you place them, and you gain a new worker. Not only are you improving your bag with that new worker, or at least changing and evolving their bag, oftentimes improving it, but you're also getting a benefit based on the board. The board has these different things that you gain. Most of them are tracks, some of them are one-time bonuses, but you're getting a worker and you're getting a benefit. This double reward, I love double rewards in games. I think it's just a really, really great mechanism to have to make players feel rewarded, and I love that aspect of Orleans. At number 30 is the one game that I can't really talk about because I have not played Mage Knight. I've heard that the best way to play Mage Knight is solo. Someday maybe I'll need to play a solo with someone else, a cooperative version of it, or just play play Mage Knight 2-player, because I have heard that it has a really unique, innovative action selection system through the deck building, a special type of deck building in Mage Knight. I need to explore it, but I can't really talk about it because I haven't played it. I'd love to hear your thoughts about it in the comments below. And in fact, I'd love to hear your thoughts about any of the games on this list. What do you think what are your top 3 favorite games on the BoardGameGeek top 21 through 30 right now? Just let me know your thoughts. Let me know your favorite mechanisms in those games. Give them some love in the comments below. Thanks.